Okay, something's arrived in a nice big parcel for me today, and it's another eBay purchase, and I thought we'd just take an initial look at it. This is how it's arrived. I've just taken it out of the box. I haven't cleaned it up. I haven't done anything with it other than connect it up to the mains and connect it up to an antenna. It's actually connected up to my Bonnie whip, a little active antenna, which is up outside at about I suppose 15 or so feet off the ground. It works quite well. So this is an FRG-7. It's one of those eBay purchases. It was advertised as I think it was advertised as for parts, as they sometimes classify them, but this one was said to be working, although pretty much untested by the sound of it. And as you can see, it's powered up. It's got a digital display, which is either an aftermarket fitment, because these receivers were analog dial receivers. I had an FRG-7 probably about 20 years ago now, and that was the analog version. This has either been retrofitted with a digital readout, or I know in the UK that certainly in the late 70s, early 1980s, some of these receivers were offered with a digital readout fitted. So anyway, this is one of the digital ones. You may notice, if you know anything about these receivers, there's something missing here. It was just as advertised, so there's no surprise. But the toggle here on the power switch, you can see the switch next to it has a little flip toggle. You can switch the lights and the display on and off. The power switch here is missing the toggle. I don't think the switch is broken. It certainly works. You can switch the receiver on and off, but it's missing its toggle. So I need to look out. From time to time I've seen those advertised on eBay. Whether I need to replace the whole switch, I don't know. I may be able to get away with just replacing the little toggle part. We'll have to see. So that's one of the obvious things. The receiver works, and if we turn the AF gain up a bit, we're on the 49 meter band here. I'll just tune up through, and I will actually do another video showing how to tune these receivers, because they're slightly different from your more modern receiver, particularly because you've got a pre-selector here with which you can pick the signal up with. So you've got your pre-selector control here, your band switch. Although this isn't really a band switch, this controls the pre-selector range. So you have 4 ranges. You switch this in, and then you tune your pre-selector on to the correct frequency. You set your megahertz here, and you'll see the readout here is just kilohertz. So we're on 6 megahertz. It's 150 kilohertz. This VFO knob is fairly stiff, and it's hard to tune precisely. See, I'm trying to get it on the 150 kilohertz exactly. It's a little bit difficult, but there we are. Okay, so we're almost there. That's as good as it's going to get. So you've got your main VFO tuning here, fine tuning, your volume control, and your mode switch. And here we've got little toggle switches for the attenuator and a tone control, 3-position tone control. What I have noticed, I've had a very quick look at this receiver before I turned the camera on. We've got some potentially dirty switches, I think, here. The pre-selector band switch can be a little bit hit and miss. Sometimes you have to wiggle it around a bit to get to the required range. So I think there's some dirty contacts on that switch. And similarly on the mode switch, okay, we've got the receiver tuned there, and we've got something on 6150. If we turn to that position, which is the auto noise limiter, we're still in AM mode. We've got the auto noise limiter there. The sound drops out, and there we are. Wiggling the switch brings it back. So we've got a slightly dirty contact there. So maybe some switch cleaner. I'll have to look at that. Other than that, I'm fairly pleased with this receiver so far. As I say, I haven't done anything with it. I haven't even cleaned it up, and it's in pretty good condition. I will go over it. I'll give it a good wipe over and a polish, and clean it up. I'll tune around and use these switches a little bit more, the band switch and the mode switch, because sometimes if the receiver hasn't been used for a while, just by using the switches it will improve things. I certainly found that on the NRD receiver that's actually sitting behind this FRG. When I first bought that, it had been standing maybe for a couple of years. The AF gain, the volume controller, is very noisy, but after a little bit of use that actually cured itself. But I think we may need a bit of switch cleaner on this switch and on this switch. I think on the FRG-7 the S meter is supposed to be lit. It should have a lamp behind it. You can probably see this one isn't lighting up, so I think there's a bulb that's gone there. So possibly we can replace that with an LED and get that lit. The megahertz dial and the pre-selector, those bulbs seem to be okay. They're lighting up. I'd also like to get a replacement toggle or replacement switch for the power switch here. So that's a little introduction. I will we'll have a better look at this receiver in a few minutes, and you'll have a little look around the back as well. And I'll also show you how to tune it, because it's a little bit different, as I said, from many of the more modern rigs. Anyway, that's the initial look at it, and we can see that luckily this is another eBay buy, which I think I've been fairly lucky here. It all seems to be working. Let's have maybe a bit of a better look at this receiver, this FRG-7. We've seen the front panel and the various controls that we can use to tune the pre-select, the megahertz and the VFO. It's quite a sizable receiver. It's difficult to give you an impression of just how large it is compared to a many I have. But it's certainly larger than my R5000 Kenwood or my R1000. It's an older set, but I'm sure when we open it up there'll be quite a lot of space inside. There's the front panel anyway. Let's turn the receiver around and you'll see that we have 4 feet, so the receiver can be stood on its end like that when you're carrying it around. And on the other side panel we have carry handle, and this one looks to be in fairly good condition as well, so there's hasn't seen much use, I don't think. On the rear panel we've got the SO239 connector for the antenna. We've also got these sort of wire connectors here. There's a shortwave one for a high impedance long wire or something like that. There's one here labelled BC, which is for the medium wave and long wave frequencies. In some ways that's a little bit of a nuisance. It's not peculiar to just the FRG-7, but many receivers, certainly from the 70s and 80s, had a separate connector for an antenna which would normally cover 2 megs and below. That does mean that if you have your main station antenna plugged into the SO239 here, it won't actually function on medium wave. You need a separate antenna going in there, and it seems that the FRG-7 is set up that way. You have an earth terminal and a mute terminal, which I believe you can connect to a transceiver, so that when the transceiver keys up, the receiver mutes itself. We've got the mains cable coming out of here. I noticed there should be a grommet around here, I would have thought. So I don't know whether this has been modified at some stage, but that doesn't look quite right to me, with the mains cable just sitting in the the aperture like that, so possibly that's been changed at some time. We've got a 12 volt connector, so this can be run off a 12 volt DC power supply through that connector. And here I believe there should be, or there may be, a battery case. But then we can get this open. These little poppers should come out. There's always one, isn't it? That's not going to come. Right, let's see what we can do with that bit. Right, okay, great. So let's lift out this panel. And, yep, lo and behold, we have there we go. Actually, this looks like it's never been used as well. These receivers could be run off batteries. I don't know how long they'd last, because I'd imagine the current consumption of the FRG-7 is fairly high. But there we go. That's the battery panel. I don't know whether these are D cells. So this would take eight D cells in here, and it goes in that way. Quite a tight fit, very tight fit actually. It is the right way up, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Okay. Right, there it goes. Quite a knack to getting these in, I think. And interesting, this is dated, this was tested on the 13th of the 2nd, 1978, so it gives you an idea of the age of the receiver too. So, here we are. Okay. And I think I'll leave putting this back until okay, well, if I'd looked at this carefully before I took it out, I'd have seen that there's a slot in here at the bottom where the battery pack just slides in there, and it should now, hopefully, close up okay. It's certainly a little bit easier there.